अस्सलाम वालेकुम माय डियर स्टूडेंट्स। आज हमारा टॉपिक है इकोलॉजिकल अडेप्टेशंस। और इकोलॉजिकल अडेप्टेशंस में पहले हम डेफिनेशन देखेंगे, सेकंड वी विल टॉक अबाउट द टाइप्स ऑफ इकोलॉजिकल अडेप्टेशंस एंड फाइनली द एग्जांपल्स ऑफ इकोलॉजिकल अडेप्टेशंस इन बोथ प्लांट्स एंड एनिमल्स। तो इकोलॉजिकल अडेप्टेशंस को हम कैसे डिफाइन करेंगे? देयर आर डिफरेंट वेज एंड फॉर द सेक ऑफ कन्वीनियंस आई हैव जस्ट कोटेड टू definitions. First, ecological adaptations mean the ability of organisms to respond and cope with the external environment through various morphological, physiological, or even behavioral means. The alternative way of defining ecological adaptations is it is any attribute, okay, any attribute of an organism, whether it is physiological, morphological, or behavioral, that enables it to survive and reproduce in its habitat. Now, the types of ecological adaptations. There are two broad types of ecological adaptations: phenotypic adaptations and genotypic adaptations. Under phenotypic adaptations, favorable changes in morphology and physiology of an organism occur in response to changes in the environmental conditions. जब environmental conditions change हो जाती है तो जो organism की physiology और morphology it changes, okay, it changes so as to help the organism prevail, or you can say so as to help the organism live in the current environmental conditions. Okay, remember जो phenotypic adaptations होती है it they disappear when the environmental conditions become normal again. Example is, there are many examples, and the stunted growth of plants during drought conditions is one among them. Now, the important terms which are associated with phenotypic adaptations. First of all, we will talk about phenotypic plasticity and then what are ecophenols or ECADs. So, the ability of genetically similar populations. याद रखना जो phenotypic adaptations होती है उसमें genetic material constant रहता है, it doesn't change, it doesn't vary between organisms. The ability of genetically similar populations or organisms to undergo phenotypic change in response to change in environmental conditions is called phenotypic plasticity. जितना ज़्यादा change एक organism दिखाएगा in terms of its morphology and physiology, उतना हम कह सकते हैं कि उसकी phenotypic plasticity है. The more an organism changes in terms of its physiology and morphology, the more it is phenotypic plasticity. And the organism that has changed its morphology and physiology, they are respectively named as ecophenols or ECADs. So, phenotypic plasticity में क्या होता है? Changes in morphology and physiology of an organism occur in response to changes in the environmental conditions. And second important thing about phenotypic adaptations is they disappear when the environmental conditions become normal again. And there are many examples. Stunted growth of plants during drought conditions is one of them. And remember, there are some important terms associated with phenotypic adaptations. The first one is phenotypic plasticity and second one is ecophenols or ECADs. Phenotypic plasticity can be defined as the ability of genetically similar organisms to undergo changes in their morphology and physiology due to change in environmental conditions, and the organisms that have changed their morphology and physiology due to change in environmental conditions, they are named as ecophenols or ECADs. Now, genotypic adaptations. What are genotypic adaptations? The changes in the genetic material of an organism or a group of organisms, or you can say a subpopulation, so as to adapt itself to a particular set of environmental conditions. So, the genetic variations that occur in a subpopulation, or you can say a group of organisms, to adapt themselves to a particular set of environmental conditions, they are known as genotypic adaptations. Genotypic adaptations में genetic material change हो जाता है. Okay, so when there occurs genetic material modifications, so it is obvious that these adaptations, or you can say genotypic adaptations, they are not reversible. If the environmental conditions return to normal again, the genotypic adaptations are not going to reverse. Now, what are ecotypes? The different genetic variants that are present in a population, they are known as ecotypes. For example, आपके पास एक population है. Say for example, a few of these individuals, they changed their genetic material in response to change in environmental conditions. Obviously, you may be having different types of individuals based on genetic material. They are known as genetic variants. These genetic variants in ecological terms, they are known as ecotypes. Okay, they are known as ecotypes. You may be having different ecotypes in a population. Remember, जो ये genotypic adaptations होती है, they have evolved in natural populations and species over long evolutionary time scale, and hence the genotypic adaptations are genetically fixed. Genetically fixed means they are present in all the individuals of a species. जो genotypic adaptations होती हैं, they are present in all the individuals of a species. Okay, that is why they are said to be genetically fixed, because it takes millions of years for these adaptations to evolve. It takes a long time scale for these adaptations to evolve in natural populations. They become genetically fixed. That means they are present in all the individuals of a species. They are, or in other words, you can say they are genetically inherited. Now the examples of ecological adaptations, there are many examples. First of all, we will talk about the ecological adaptations that occur in desert plants. There are a number of adaptations that can be seen in desert plants. First of all, they have thick cuticle that prevents water loss, and they also have sunken stomata, which means the stomata are present inside the grooves. Okay, they are sunken in, for example, this is leaf surface. They have thick cuticle. Second is that their stomata, they are sunken. Sunken means they are present inside grooves. It also helps them reduce the loss of water. The second adaptation of the desert plants is CAM photosynthesis, crassulacean acid metabolism. Okay, इसमें क्या होता है? The stomata remain closed during the day conditions and opens at night, and this obviously prevents water loss during hot and dry day conditions. And in some other desert plants, it has been found that the leaves, they get modified to spines. For example, in case of Opuntia, the spines that you see, they are actually the leaves. Okay, they are the leaves that have got modified to form spines, and this feature of the plants helps them reduce the surface area of leaves and hence water loss. So the question is, if the leaves get modified to form spines, what are the photosynthetic, or you can say assimilatory organs of the plant? In these plants, photosynthesis is therefore performed by flattened and green stems. Now the ecological adaptations in polar mammals. The polar mammals, they possess a thick layer of fat below the skin, which acts as an insulator and prevents heat loss during winter conditions. Example is seals, whales, and walruses. And besides these organisms, polar bears also possess a thick layer of fat below their skin. Now the ecological adaptations in case of desert lizards. These are lizards, they show behavioral changes to cope up with the external variations in environmental temperature. These lizards, they have some behavioral means so as to cope up with the variations in temperature. For example, they bask in the sun to absorb heat when the body temperature lowers, and they move into shades when the temperature starts increasing. And finally, the kangaroo rat. It is the paragon of ecological adaptations that enable organisms to live in extreme dry conditions. This organism lives in hot deserts without water, and it is believed that this organism meets all its water requirements through the metabolic water which is produced during oxidation of fats. ओके ये जो ऑर्गेनिज्म है कंगारो रैट, it doesn't live in those environments which have enough or ample water. Instead it lives in hot deserts and meets all the water requirements through the metabolic water, and this metabolic water is produced during oxidation of fats. Second important thing about this organism is it concentrates its urine to minimize water loss through excretion. Okay, so this was all about the ecological adaptations and some important examples of ecological adaptations in the plants and animals. I hope you all understand this. See you soon with a new lesson. Till then, stay blessed.